Good morning, church. So excited to be here with you again. Hey, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to have a bite of this apple. Something about a really good, crisp apple. Really like it. And I wanted to use the apple as an illustration today, not because I'm going to do anything with the Garden of Eden, not because I'm going to do anything about the fall, but I want to talk about the apple a little bit. You see, most of us are very familiar with the center of an apple. That harder part, those seeds, we know what it looks like. We've seen those pictures of an apple sitting there with a bite out of it or a few bites out of it, and we know exactly what we're looking at. We call it the core. The core. Over the next few weeks, what I want to do is to do a sermon series on Sunday mornings entitled At the Core, defining the center of our experience. The same way as we know every apple's got those seeds in the middle of it, every apple's got that harder center. I want us to understand that there are certain things that we should agree on that are at the very core of our experience, the very heart of who we are. So, over the next 6 weeks, I'm going to go ahead and look at a number of these values which we hold, and they're the foundation of our experience as we pursue the mission that we believe God is calling us to in this next chapter of our ministry here. To do that, I'm going to start with a little story. Okay, now imagine this with me for a minute. All right, so you wake up at 5:30 in the morning and you get an early start on your way out to work. You're the first to arrive. You've got a really busy week ahead of you, and it's going to be a full day as well. Now, you've prepped well for a Monday morning meeting. You've got notes, handouts, metrics. Everything is just the way you like it. It's 9 a.m. You're ready to go. And then the train starts to go off the rails. 2 critical team members are late. The video link to someone working from home isn't connecting. And just when you're finally ready to go, in walks the last team member carrying a birthday coffee cake with candles. People are frustrated and a little accomplished and struggling. A total derailment has occurred. Here's why. You see, there's been a clash of values. And those values, well, actually, none of them are wrong. And actually, every single one of those persons who showed up demonstrated really significant values. I mean, one person valued accuracy and commitment and order and timeliness and unity. And then 2 members, they were late, but I could almost guarantee that they value things like acceptance, compassion, flexibility, resourcefulness, tolerance. And then that birthday singer that showed up, I could probably guess that they value things like boldness, connection, generosity, spontaneity. Yep, values. We've got tons of them. Every individual is kind of wired with their own sense of values. And many of us have values that in our families are very different than a value another family might have. So how do we as a church who say we have values, how do we move forward and make sure that our values don't collide and cause a ton of stress, a ton of damage, a lot of problems with derailments? So the purpose in this At the Core series is going to be to reflect, to clarify, and to commit. We'll reflect on the values of the church, some of the values of the past, some values people say they have now. We will clarify what those things are, some of those, and we'll commit to those ones that we can all hold in common. Over the 6 weeks ahead, we, the New Hope Community Church, will do just that. Reflect on those. So I want to go to the first one today. And I want to talk about a foundational value for myself, perhaps the most significant value for myself. You see, value number 1 for me is this. And I think it ought to be the value for the church also. I think you're going to agree. Number 1, it is all about Jesus Christ. It's about the forgiver. It's about his story. It's about who he is. It is about what he has done. I read to you from Revelation chapter 5, verses 11 to 14. I love the book of Revelation. I love these glimpses, these snapshots we get behind the scene as what heaven is like. Revelation chapter 5, verses 11 to 14 says this: Then I looked, and I heard the voice of many angels, numbering thousands upon thousands, and 10,000 times 10,000. They encircled the throne, and the living creatures and the elders, and in a loud voice they were saying, Worthy is the Lamb who was slain, to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise. And then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and on the sea and all that's in them saying, To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be praise and honor and glory and power forever and ever. And then the four living creatures said, Amen. And the elders fell down and worshiped. You see, I say it must be all about Christ because he is the focal point of our worship. We come as a worshiping congregation. We come celebrating. Yes, we celebrate what he has done in our lives, but more significantly, we celebrate what he has done in our lives. It is about him. It is about the Lamb slain, the crucified one. It is about he who everyone in heaven worships and adores, the glory that is lifted to him, the praise. We come remembering that he is the focus of our worship. So I say the first and foremost value must always be Jesus himself. It's about the forgiver. He's the focal point of our worship. But secondly, he is the thesis of our message. He is the theme, the heart of what we preach and share. Who he is, what he's done, what it's like to experience him, that is the theme when we share our experience with others. Paul said it this way in 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Starting in verse 22, he says this: Jews demand signs, Greeks look for wisdom, but we preach Christ, a stumbling block to Jews, foolishness to Gentiles. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God, the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom. The weaknesses of God is stronger than human strength. Jesus is the theme of our message. Every study, every sermon, every worship experience somehow must bring us back to the point where we are remembering who he is, what he's done, the message he has shared with us, and that we are to share with others. You see, that brings me to my third point. Yes, he's the focal point of our worship. Yes, he's the thesis of our message. But my third point is this: he is the driving point of our endeavors. What we do, whatever ministries we do in the future, whatever we add, whatever daring risks we choose to take, all of these things are driven not by our desire for glory, not out of false humility or conviction. It's driven by our passion for him. He is the driving point of our endeavors. Paul in Corinthians again said this: Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Listen to this statement. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. That word labor there often is simply translated toil, that word in Greek. It's a noun. Most of the time we think of it as being hard, continuous effort. exhausting labors, challenges, a laborious task. But its most archaic translation was this. It meant our battle, our strife, our struggle, what we wrestled with, what we gave our lives to. For our labor, that for which we battle, that which we struggle for, that which we strive for, let it not be in vain. Let it be about Christ and Christ alone. Many times we view that word, and I think we see that word labor and we kind of picture it like, oh man, that's like me pushing this big rock up a hill, this big, humongous boulder, and it's up to me to push it up the hill. It's not that. It is all those small, little, everyday things that become a part of our battle, our striving, our struggle, our routine, our workday experience to advance who He is. That's what we are about. You see, we make Jesus the focal point of our worship. We make Jesus the thesis of our message. We make Jesus the driving point of all our endeavors. That's who we are. We're the New Hope Community Church, and it's all about Jesus. From day one, all about Jesus. And for how many days He gives us to exist, let it be all about Jesus. I'm Pastor Bruce Rezengata. It's my privilege to be here. We invite you to come worship with us sometime. I recently got asked why I refer to that 9 o'clock service as the Anglo service. The 1:30 service is the Hispanic service. Those are just ways to differentiate not the color of our skin, not our culture. They differentiate the language that's spoken. At 9 o'clock, the Anglo Church meets. It's an English service with people of white and brown and black and yellow skins, and we gather together and we give praise to Jesus. We worship Him. We lift up His message. The Presbyterian Church, that's how they identify themselves. Word of Life, they meet at 11 o'clock. And that small body, that remnant there, striving yet to fulfill their calling and purpose before God. The Hispanic Church, we identify them simply by this. Not everyone who shows up there would be a Latino or is Cuban or Puerto Rican or Mexican. But we identify them this way. In that service, Spanish is spoken. And then Celebrate Recovery, we identify that congregation on Tuesday night by what they are experiencing. They have gathered together in their brokenness, acknowledging their needs, acknowledging that which chains them, that they might be freed from those chains. And they celebrate that. We identify ourselves in many different ways here, but we are the New Hope Community Church. I invite you to come visit us sometime. I'd love to meet you. Blessings.